Ever thought about making a podcast? Well, Anchor is the easiest and simplest way to do so. Let me explain. For starters, it's free. There's also creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone, laptop, or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on multiple platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and much, much more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in a podcast in one place. So give it a try.
Hello, welcome back, everyone, to the podcast where Sam and I come on and talk about movies.
That's all we do anymore.
Yeah,
That's all we do.
Exactly. But seriously, though, welcome back, everyone. It's great if you're joining us today. We're gonna have a fun conversation here about Sam, your favorite franchise, right? Is this your favorite franchise?
Yeah, I'm not much of a franchise guy.
But this is a franchise.
I see the original and I just keep going. But Indiana Jones, man. Indiana Jones I first watched when I was 6 years old-ish. And I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark and I became very interested in this character and what this guy does, and I'm like, oh, they made more of these. And I remember seeing, Crystal Skull, and even then in like 2009 I was like, that was a little disappointing, but I'll take it. Like,
sure.
Oh my god,
sounds like you give me more indie.
So yeah, I would have to say that Indiana Jones is my favorite franchise.
Before we get into that, though, Sam, I know you have just a slight movie news. Just some industry news. So why don't you hit that real quick? This is good news, by the way.
Yeah, this is good news. This is California-based film and TV productions will soon be allowed to get back to work. And I guess what that means is the majority of Hollywood is going to start working again next week.
It was for anyone who doesn't know, it was put on hold, or production for everything essentially was put on hold for a better 4 months or so.
Yeah, something like that.
So there will be a period in probably a year and a half where there's a weird 5 months where nothing is happening because things don't happen immediately. Obviously, movies are made well before they come out because they have to market them and everything like that, produce them. But
right.
In about a year and a half, it'll be a weird 5 months where nothing came out because nothing was being made in the year 5 months before that. It's the same thing that happened when the Writers Guild strike was going on. Nothing was affected when the writers were striking at the moment, but then in a year when no movies were written, or actually writing was even different because it was 2 years out, the writing process is. So
yeah.
It was 2 years later, then it started to catch up where no movies were in the theater. So just weird, but that's good news though that that production is going to start ramping up soon.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see which movies, because I don't know the numbers on which are which, but what percent of movies are actually made in Hollywood these days?
That's a good question.
Most of them are productions by Hollywood companies.
Yeah,
but
are actually produced in Hollywood. That's a good question. It's
because Florida has been open for 2 months. I don't know if people move there.
Yeah,
to start working on things.
Well, and for certain movies, you have to have certain scenery as well.
Yeah. So I don't know. That'll be interesting.
Good point. I think a lot of television is shot in Hollywood. But a higher percentage at least. But movies, that's a good question. I don't know.
So there's that, and we'll be looking forward to hearing more about stuff as production continues.
And as of right now, the next movie slotted is July 17th, and that's Tenet. We're still holding out for that. And Sam, a rumor you had heard maybe 2 weeks ago on the show, I don't remember, of Tenet being 3 hours and 15 minutes is indeed true.
My God.
It is 195 minutes, and I am there.
Oh man!
So this is, I'm excited for it, but the 3 hours and 15 minutes is almost bad news for me because I feel like Nolan he's biting off more than he can chew right now.
It probably he's just his last movie was Dunkirk in 2016.
2017.
That was 2015?
17.
Oh, was it 17?
Yeah, summer of
2016. Okay, so 3 years isn't that bad. I was going to say 4 years is a long time. 3 years isn't that bad. But,
yeah.
Well, okay, so he's been out of the Interstellar was 2014.
Yep.
So he's been out of the weird sci-fi Nolan-esque bizarre movies for a long time.
Yeah.
Trippy movies.
Yeah, Interstellar, Inception, Prestige, maybe a little bit, but yeah. So,
and I've shared this before, but like the idea of Interstellar being a little too overwrought, a little too like trippy and out there in terms of its themes, like wormholes and whatnot.
Sure.
A lot of people view that as Nolan trying to outdo himself after Inception, because Inception could be understood if you paid attention enough, and then he wanted to go even deeper.
Inception isn't that complicated. Some people will think that, but if you really listen, they give quite a bit of good exposition. So
yeah, and then a lot of people think that Nolan realized that Interstellar went too far, so he did Dunkirk as like a reset.
Yeah.
And so hopefully he kind of balances both a lot better.
So I'm optimistic for Tenet, and I'm excited for it. I just hope I hope it's good. I really do hope it's good. Tenet is my most anticipated of 2020. So
yeah. Same. I mean, well, what else can we anticipate? Really?
Yeah. Mank.
Mank. Oh, that's right.
So Mank, The French Dispatch.
I'm thinking of Ending Things, the new Charlie Kaufman movie.
Okay.
Which is, I think it's supposed to be released by Netflix.
Sure.
And I think he didn't even write it. I think it's based on a novel, which, when it comes to Kaufman, might be a better thing. I don't know.
Yeah, we need to ground that man. Otherwise, you just don't know what he's going to do.
He's out of control. But this is only his second directorial effort after Synecdoche.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. I'm not going to say anything about that.
Yeah.
So let's move on from the movie news side of things, even though we talked literally one thing, but then just tangented our way around. Yeah. We're tangential people, okay?
We are. This is how you do a podcast, people.
Yes.
You fill time by talking about things and going off the beaten path.
Well, we took many classes, obviously.
On podcasting and filmmaking.
Yeah. Clearly.
At GU in South Dakota.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
Yep, there it is.
So we did this game last week where we would have Will. I'm not very good at it, so I'm not going to try today. But we had Will. I give Will two actors, and essentially he has to
link them, connect them.
Yeah, it's hard to explain.
Through
Link
other
them
movies.
Through other actors that were in the same movies as them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
you know, that is difficult to do.
I did it last time. I'm 1 for 1 on the show, which is
Yes.
that. And the last one was kind of tough too. I'll say we had a
Really? I gave you
they were
Steve
just odd.
Buscemi and Paul. Well, yeah. I
Just
needed
odd
to do
actors,
odd.
yeah.
Because,
Last week was Steve Buscemi and Paul Giamatti, and I was able to get it, but and maybe 4 tries. I don't remember now. Anyway,
yeah.
so
Something
we're doing
like
it
that.
again this week.
And Will, I think your weakness would probably be. I think it would be anyone's weakness, not your weakness, but anyone's. If you had like multi-generational actors, so like
I've thought about that.
like what if I gave you an actor from like who was, I guess, at his height in the 50s and was in some movies in the 70s and 80s, but kind of died.
Yeah, that would be tough for
Like,
me. You're right.
And then I gave you a modern one.
It would be tough to link those.
That's what I've been thinking about.
You could try that, but I don't know if I'd be able to do it.
I'm going to do someone.
Because the thing is, with actors in the 50s, I know a few, but like I've seen them in 3 movies type of thing.
Yep. So you would have to go from there.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
That at least gives you a starting point. I'm going to. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give you Marlon Brando and Naomi Watts. Have you seen a Naomi Watts movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Marlon Brando.
Yes.
And Naomi Watts. So Marlon Brando is, like you said, one of those generational actors, but he is a little bit easier because he's been in like The Godfather, who stars alongside Pacino. So I'm going to go Godfather with Marlon Brando.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to go Diane Keaton.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go to Nicholson. Yeah.
Something's got to give.
Yep, something's got to give with Diane Keaton.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if this is gonna work. Okay, yeah, I have it. Okay, and then Nicholson in The Departed with Matt Damon. Matt Damon in Ford v Ferrari with Christian Bale, and Christian Bale in Vice with Naomi Watts.
Whoa.
Okay, so I went a little faster. So Marlon Brando.
I'm following along here.
Okay.
Christian Bale. And then, what was the last one?
Vice.
Oh, gotcha.
With Bale as Dick Cheney.
So that is...
Was that 6? Oh, crap. That might not have been 6. So it was Godfather.
Yeah, not including...
Yeah, it doesn't include Godfather. It doesn't include one end of the spectrum.
4, 5. Oh, that was only 4.
4.
Not including Godfather.
Yeah, because you have to start
4.
somewhere. All right, there we go. So it went Godfather to Something's Gotta Give. That's the most obscure movie ever. To where did I go from there? The Departed.
Yep.
To
Ford v Ferrari and then
Vice. Let's go. I did it. That one's
a lot easier than I thought.
So if you do like literally any other actor from the 50s and 60s, that will be tough.
Yeah, I was gonna say Jimmy Stewart.
I don't know if I could have done James Stewart.
I bet like if you went like Rear Window to Grace Kelly, I feel like that would open something.
Yeah, that's the other thing though with someone like James Stewart or an older actor is I'm not like well versed in their filmography, I guess. Like I've seen, I'm looking at his right now. I think I've seen 3 of his movies. It's a Wonderful Life, Vertigo, and Rear Window. Wow.
Yeah.
I guess I could.
But
that's tough.
Yeah, it'd be hard. The interesting thing is that back in those days, like film acting wasn't exactly a steady profession. So these people would do
a lot,
like hundreds of movies.
Yeah,
just
you're right,
because there was no box office returns to really keep you afloat, I guess.
Yeah,
you just kept making them. So that would be interesting.
That's a good point.
Rope.
I haven't seen Rope yet. I actually just watched The Birds yesterday. I'm gonna try and knock out some more Hitchcock. But
yeah, The Birds is all right.
I was a fan. And I appreciate that Hitchcock didn't. I shouldn't spoil it, but I'm assuming no one's gonna watch this movie. So, but if you want to check out The Birds by Hitchcock, I love that he didn't explain it. I was like, sometimes filmmakers get like they feel like they need to explain what's going on. No, you don't need to. Just anyway.
Yeah.
Let's get into some Indiana Jones talk.
Yes.
So let's just go movie by movie and say some of our favorite parts and what we think of the movie. Then what we'd like to see in the future for Indiana Jones 5, which is to come out within the next few years, and then even past that. So Sam, as we were saying earlier, this is your favorite franchise. Let's just have you start off with Raiders of the Lost Ark.
So Raiders of the Lost Ark is, as we've covered before, one of my favorite movies ever. And really, I think it's because for me and for American popular culture, redefined what we look at as an action hero protagonist. The character of Indiana Jones isn't exactly the most, I guess, ideal action hero because he's not exactly ethical all the time. He destroys artifacts constantly. He's pretty much driven strictly by the ideal that things should be in a museum, which is vastly different from any other action hero, which will inevitably do the right thing. And Indy doesn't always do the right thing, and that's why I think he's so relatable as a character because we're all struggling.
Absolutely.
And I just think it's so interesting that the idea of Indiana Jones goes way back to 1973 when George Lucas wrote this little spec for a script called The Adventures of Indiana Smith. And then subsequently he went on vacation to Hawaii with Steven Spielberg, and then they started like really fleshing out this character. Well, they were building a sandcastle actually.
Perfect.
It's so weird. Imagine seeing those two on a beach building a sandcastle.
Yeah, George Lucas is like the most uptight person ever.
I know.
Speaking of Spielberg, though, I think Spielberg is nearly the perfect man to do this franchise. He's done all 4 for anyone who doesn't know. He's nearly the perfect person to do it. And he's not on board for the 5th, so we'll see where that leads. But I think Spielberg is like the first modern day blockbuster director with Jaws and E.T. and things of that nature. Yeah. Actually, I think Raiders would have been before E.T. But I mean, he's the first modern day blockbuster, and this would be considered a blockbuster essentially.
And I think we've talked about this before, but there's I have a way to kind of classify directors, and it's just kind of auteur versus utility, stylism versus versatility, and visionary versus classicism. And Spielberg definitely in that first category, in that first binary, he definitely falls into a utility director.
Yeah,
like he's not one to write his own scripts or craft his own story necessarily. Although he came up with the idea conceptually of Indiana Jones, he didn't write the script, but he helped come up with the idea. He's definitely that utility director, though. So, there's probably hundreds and hundreds of screenwriters even today who are constantly writing scripts in hope that it would attract someone like Steven Spielberg's attention.
Exactly.
Spielberg gets a script and he goes and makes a really good movie.
Yeah.
And I think he's a role model for that idea of a director. One who's hands-off story-wise and is just focused on the technical aspects. Like, gets the script and says,
absolutely,
how can we flesh this out on screen?
Yeah, Spielberg, in terms of just directing, is one of the greats, obviously. And that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not he's writing his own screenplays, but in just terms of directing, he's one of the greats, obviously. So I think this franchise was obviously in good hands with him. But let's just talk about in Raiders some of our favorite parts. I know you definitely have a lot. Any specific lines or moments that really stick out to you as some greatness?
I have way too many favorite scenes in that movie.
Okay.
Any scene could be my favorite.
Yeah.
I love the character of Marion just in general because she's just so spunky and aggressive. But I think the scene on the boat might be my favorite romance scene of all time. First of all, when Indy has wounds all over his body from getting dragged behind a semi truck, she says something to the effect of, "Where doesn't it hurt?" And then Indy starts pointing at various locations for her to kiss. And then there's that other scene where, just before that, she's getting dressed before this spinning mirror, and Indy's behind the mirror, and then she flips the mirror and knocks Indy on the head.
Yeah, that's good.
And then it just cuts to the wide shot of the boat because they're on a cruise ship. It's more of a freight liner, and you just hear Indy screaming in pain, and then it cuts back to Mary, and Mary's like, "Did you say something?"
That is good.
Oh my god!
I love. It might be maybe it's a little cheesy. I don't know, but the transitions of when they're traveling to a different place, I think is genius.
Yeah,
it's just a map with a red line. It looks a little. I don't want to say it looks a little silly, but it's it fits perfectly for this franchise. For anyone who doesn't know, when they're traveling anywhere, if he starts at his university and then he's going to Egypt or whatever, it'll have a red line essentially that he's taking the plane to Egypt.
Well,
on a
and
map.
it's been parodied so many times.
Yeah, I think it works well though.
It does, and people forget that the original idea for Indiana Jones was that it was supposed to have a little bit of campiness.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
It should too.
It wasn't supposed to be this gritty, serious action movie all the time because some of the stunts are a little ridiculous.
Yeah,
and some of the villains are a little out there, but that's kind of part of the charm.
Of course.
That's what people bring up a lot when they're defending Crystal Skull. But Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think, is probably the best Indiana Jones movie. I think I enjoy Last Crusade more.
Interesting.
But I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is just better in terms of a storyline.
Yeah.
Now we could talk. This is interesting. We could talk the significance of the Ark of the Covenant, which is the main plot device of Raiders of the Lost Ark, obviously, and what it has to do with Indy's character in terms of Indy is obviously like a very cynical character, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
And then he's not exactly interested in the religious or spiritual significance.
No, he isn't.
Of these artifacts, and he just wants to bring them back to a museum. And even after he experiences this idea of the wrath of God coming upon the Nazis after they open the Ark, Indy is still not totally convinced. Well, I guess his only concern is that the U.S. government is going to misuse it, right? Instead of putting it in a museum where he thinks it belongs.
Well, they don't do either of the two, so I guess he kind of
they don't do either of the two. So what do you think about that?
I think it's like the use of it. You mean?
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I mean, every movie needs a plot device to move the story forward. And this one's good. Like it works for the story, and like you were saying, Indiana Jones just wants these artifacts to be where he believes they should be, so other people can see them, so they're not misused, things like that. So I think it's a good use of the Ark.
Yeah,
and same with all of them. They each kind of have their own thing they're after, I guess, kind of.
Yeah.
So yeah, they all work well in that respect.
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts, just real quick before we go to a break. What are your thoughts on this being set in the past? I mean, obviously that, like, now, like, they were made in the 80s and 90s, but like it's set in the past, obviously. But like, it's even before 1980 when the movie takes place, and especially Crusade.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, real quick? I think it's genius.
We talked about this last week with the Coens, and the Coens say that setting a movie in the past tends to help it age better because you're already thinking about what it should look like to reflect it in the past. And then that way, when people watch the movie years after it came out, they can be like, oh, this looks like it's set in the 30s or 40s. I really like the idea that it was set in the 30s, especially pre World War II, I guess. Like, obviously the Nazis are in full force in the movie, but they're not. They haven't invaded all of Europe yet.
No, they have not.
So this idea of like they're being aggressive, they're very interested in artifacts.
Yeah.
Indy is approached by 2 CIA agents at the beginning of the movie who are concerned about the Nazis' activity regarding the Ark. Yeah. So I found that to be really realistic. Like, of course, that's something Hitler would want. Like, he's interested in these deeply significant religious artifacts.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that part, that it's set in the past. Like you were saying, it already has age, so it makes it that much better. I think real quick, I'm just going to say my favorite part. I love when he's in Egypt and the guy dressed in black cloak and like a red.
Yes.
And he's throwing the sword and everything like that, and Indy just shoots him. It's the greatest moment for me in the movie.
Do you know the story behind that?
I do, and for the listener who doesn't, Harrison Ford was like sick that day, and they were supposed to have a long action sequence, a lot of punching and whatnot.
Yeah.
And a little bit of sword fighting, and Harrison Ford was sick, so he's like, I can't do that. We're like, can I just shoot him? And and Spielberg was like, sure, that works. That'll be funny. I just think that's hilarious.
I think it was he got food poisoning.
Is that it? Okay.
Because they were legitimately shooting on location in Egypt, and the food was just like terrible and undercooked.
That's funny.
And I think it was only Steven Spielberg who didn't get sick. Like everyone on the crew, because Steven Spielberg was eating canned foods from the U.S. the entire time.
Either way, that's a great moment. But before we talk about Temple of Doom and Last Crusade and that fourth one, we're gonna hit a quick break here. So thanks for listening. Welcome back, everyone, to the we'll say it, official Indiana Jones podcast. We'll get that trademark sometime soon. The papers are just going through.
Yep.
And then we'll let you know when that happens. But so we just concluded our Raiders talk, and I know this next one, Temple of Doom, is not my favorite. In fact, I don't like Temple of Doom. So I'll get my thoughts. I'll get my thoughts out of the way now, and then let Sam tell you how great it is later.
Yeah.
To be fair, I've seen Temple of Doom a single time when I was.
What?
I've seen it once, literally one time.
Oh my god!
When I was in second grade, I was sick at home with, I don't know, maybe fever or something like that. And I was like, I'm going to watch the Indiana Jones movies. Watched Temple of Doom when I was like 8 years old and was absolutely horrified. I was terrified of it, and I have not seen it since. So it's not really fair.
Wait a second.
It's not really fair.
Didn't you watch Kill Bill when you were like 8?
That was like 10.
Okay.
But Kill Bill is so campy. Like I don't know. Like when I'm 8, I just didn't really like the idea of someone getting their heart ripped out. I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe I was a stupid kid. But so it's
I could handle decapitation by a samurai sword. That was no problem.
Well, obviously. That was at least, this was just a poor innocent kid. So my criticisms of it, I guess, is again, I haven't seen it in so long. So I think I've seen parts of it since, but not the whole thing. Definitely not.
Yeah. So
I do need to rewatch it, but I think my criticisms of it, I don't like the kid. I think he's pretty annoying, short round. But that being said, it's the same studio that cast Jake Lloyd as a young Anakin Skywalker. So maybe they're just doomed to repeat the past.
Yeah.
I think the kid's awfully annoying.
I remember having this debate with you in like 8th grade.
Obviously, as we do.
Our geography teacher was like, short round? I disagree. Short round is the best part of that movie.
I cannot stand him. Every time he says,
he's so funny.
Every time he says like "Hello, Indy," and I just
it's so.
I've
cute.
watched YouTube videos of it, and I just cringe, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But again, I haven't. It's hard for me to complain about it because I haven't seen it in so long. So I will rewatch it soon. But Sam, what are your thoughts on?
It's interesting that you have so much like distaste for it, because
I think it's just a bad memory of it. To be honest, I feel like if I watched it, I'd be like, yeah, that was good. That was good.
Well, that's yeah. And you were sick at the time, so I don't know if like
heart getting ripped out of.
I don't know if that feels particularly good when you have a fever, like when you're watching someone get like slowly rolled down into a lava pit. That you're like,
yeah, that too, with chanting going on.
with like this cage, and they just like dip them in, and then they pull them out. There's just nothing there.
Yeah, probably wasn't the biggest fan of that.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you have distaste for it, because Steven Spielberg also has distaste for it.
I think it's the weakest of the trilogy, but
yeah, well, I don't think anyone would question that.
Yeah,
like you're gonna find very few people who will say that Temple of Doom was better than Last Crusade or Raiders.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Steven Spielberg says that he dislikes Temple of Doom even more than Crystal Skull. Even he thinks Temple of Doom was too dark, and George Lucas has said that they wanted to kind of mirror the Star Wars trilogy in that Empire Strikes Back is kind of the darker of the
It is
three.
darker. Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like a little more edgy in
Yeah.
that respect, which
No,
I
I know
understand.
what you're saying there.
I can get that. But yeah, Steven Spielberg is quoted as saying that the best thing that came out of Temple of Doom was that I met my wife. Because
Hey, no
afterwards
complaints
he went
there.
on to marry Kate Capshaw.
That's funny, actually. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And she plays, I will agree that, Kate Capshaw is the worst of Indy's love interest because she is very annoying. She is very annoying.
Yeah.
And I don't know how intentional that was, but it is hard to watch at times. But I guess the contrast between Indy and Willie, who's played by Kate Capshaw, they're such opposite people because Willie has nothing, like she understands nothing about archaeology. She has no respect for anything that Indy is doing. And she just wants to go home. And Indy cares about everything.
Yeah.
And he's like, he stumbles accidentally into this entire cult in the middle of India. So, yeah. But the I guess Temple of Doom as a movie I think it's still great. I think the action sequences are really good. I think there's a lot of the opening 45-minute, opening hour, I would say.
I do like the
fly
opening,
by.
actually. That initial sequence is very good. I do remember that.
Yeah, and the opening scene. We should also mention. Not a lot of people realize this. Not enough people realize this. Is Temple of Doom is actually a prequel, technically.
To Raiders.
Yes, it's set a year before Raiders. I think it's set in 1935, and Raiders is set in 1936.
That's such a weird, why do that?
Yeah, I think it was
understand
because I think Steven Spielberg said that they didn't want to have Nazis be the bad guy again, which I understand.
Okay.
But they're like, at that time, I don't know, who else.
Who else would have been the bad guy?
Yeah, so they decided to set it a year before.
Okay.
Which makes sense.
That's fair.
But the other thing is, one of the main inspirations for the character of Indiana Jones was always James Bond. So they decided with that opening scene in Club Obi-Wan, which is an homage to Obi-Wan Kenobi, obviously, they decided that this is really the first scene that we see Indiana Jones, the first, because it's set in 1935. So
yeah,
they decided
chronologically.
that they wanted Indiana Jones to be looking like James Bond with the white tux and everything, which is really cool.
That is cool, actually. I like that.
And that whole sequence where he gets poisoned and the antidote is getting kicked all over the floor, and Willie kicks it across the room, and he's like, ah!
I do like that. That is funny. I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I just. It just feels different than, and maybe that's what you were saying with the villain. It just feels different to me than Crusade and Raiders.
Yeah.
Because maybe of the villain. I mean, maybe I just don't gravitate to that villain more than I do in Raiders and Crusade, because I think the villains in Raiders and Crusade are hold it together, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Jones, but the villains make it work for me.
Well, and this is interesting because lately in class, for my broadcasting class, we had been doing just reports on individual movies that we watched, and you can kind of tap into anything you want to talk about the movie.
Sure.
And I started talking about, we watched all 4 Indiana Jones movies because they're all on Netflix, so check them out if you haven't seen them. But for Temple of Doom, I kind of talked about how now the antagonists are part of Eastern culture instead of Western culture. I guess anyone who knows anything about history would say, yeah, the Nazis are the worst of what Western culture can be.
Absolutely.
Like this hyper nationalism, this hyper idealism in terms of a governmental institution. But Eastern culture, I guess, would be more focused on, I guess, like spiritual practices. So this is where you kind of get, I guess, a depiction of like a cult rather than a government.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say about Temple of Doom. I don't know if you have any more thoughts, but it's just not my favorite. It's still good. I'd probably recommend it to people. Like if you're gonna watch all of them, obviously I'm not gonna say skip this one, but I do need to revisit it sometime soon.
Yeah, for sure.
So move on to Crusade.
Sure.
All right, Last Crusade is freaking phenomenal. I love this movie, and Sean Connery is the best part of this movie, in my opinion. He's absolutely hilarious.
Yes. Yeah.
As Indy's dad. It's just so funny because he's like trying to parent him along the way. And Indiana Jones Jr. is like he's trying to give him advice and he's like just not having it. And it's so funny to me. Like that dynamic is great in my opinion.
Yes, for sure. I think the beauty of Last Crusade, there's a great video essay on YouTube somewhere called Raiders of the Lost Character Arc, and it's probably like half an hour long, and it just goes through how Indiana's character arc progresses through the trilogy. They really don't get into Crystal Skull because they don't think it's pertinent.
Mm-hmm.
But in Last Crusade, you kind of see his character arc completed. He goes from not really believing in anything, not really believing in the power of, I guess, human connection or the power of God. And he ends up connecting with his father, understanding why that relationship is important, understanding that there is probably something beyond himself, and that the world doesn't necessarily revolve around him.
Sure. I think Raiders is so good from a structural standpoint and an absolute entertainment standpoint. I don't know. Should we get some specifics? Or I love the scene where he breaks them out. That's great.
Yeah, I think. Well, again, we have a plot device that's really pertinent in Christianity specifically. I guess the Ark of the Covenant is pretty pertinent in Christianity, but it's very pertinent in Judaism.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's we kind of have this like Old Testament versus New Testament dynamic. So obviously the Holy Grail is believed to be the cup that was used at the Last Supper by Jesus.
Yeah.
So there's that whole dichotomy. Obviously the idea of the Holy Grail as a plot device is nothing new. And I think that's something that Spielberg and Lucas kind of shied away from, because obviously you have Monty Python and the Holy Grail, it had been used as a trope for a long time.
I mean, especially with Monty Python too. I feel like Monty Python's just so goofy, where if you use it in Indiana Jones, it feels like, why are they doing this? We just had Monty Python where it's like an absolute weird fest, Yeah. I love that last sequence though. It's great. That last an hour is so good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that the I guess entire point of it is him trying to rekindle a relationship with his father.
With his dad, yeah.
Through the Grail, which has this whole mysticism of being you have the idea of Jesus, who's like the Son of God, trying to rekindle his relationship with God the Father, I guess you could say. It depends on what lens you view that from, but like, so they use that as a device, as a way to connect the two, who are both very imperfect men, Indiana Jones and his father. Also, the idea that I guess Henry Sr. doesn't recognize his son as his own person.
Yeah.
Like the entire movie, he calls him Junior. Like he's like kind of like a shortcoming of himself.
That's what I was kind of saying by when he's giving him advice and things like that. Like he won't let him be. By the way, interestingly enough, I'm pretty sure like Sean Connery, who is Indiana Jones Sr. and Harrison Ford Jr., they're like 12 years apart from each other too, which is funny.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's so funny. It's so funny. But this goes back to the James Bond thing, because they thought Bond was the main inspiration for Indiana Jones. So they're like, why don't we get the original Bond to play his dad?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts on Elsa as
I love Elsa.
Okay, I do too. I think she's great. Is there ever like romance there? I mean, there kind of is, but is she just playing him in the end? Like, or is it temptations get her?
The entire sequence when Indy and his dad are tied up back to back.
Yeah.
Elsa is talking to Indy.
Yeah.
His dad is like, it was wonderful. It's like,
that is great.
And then the way he says to Indy, well, she talks in her sleep. She's a Nazi. And he goes, "What? Why do you know how she talks in her sleep?" Like,
yeah, it's so funny.
The character of Elsa. First of all, the actress who played her, Alison Doody, who is an Irish actress who I could instantly fall in love with. Like before Saoirse Ronan's time. She was, I need to get this right, because she was very young.
Let's see. She was born in 1966.
She was like 23. When it came out, she was like 23.
Yeah.
She's like 21 or 22 when they were filming it. That's insane.
Yeah, that is kind of nuts. Especially since Harrison Ford he was 42, so yeah, he's 57 or no, 47. My bad, 40. So he's double plus a few.
Yep.
It's a weird love interest. I don't know if that aspect really works, but that character really works, I guess. I don't know if there's ever like specific like romance, but it's definitely there, if you know what I mean. So I don't know if that really works, but definitely the character as a whole, as kind of like the given to temptation. I mean, she represents that essentially. It's great.
Even by the end, she's tempting him in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
When she has the Grail and she breaks the seal.
Yeah.
She said, well, it's ours now. We can just go. And it's interesting because Indy, up until this point, hasn't had a woman who's deceived him yet.
Yep.
Who hasn't, like, manipulated him yet. Like, Marion is blatant and honest about what she wants. And then Willie Scott is just too dumb to be able to plot anything.
Yeah, seriously.
So
I think, I like the character of Elsa. I honestly might like her better than Marion. Obviously not as a love interest, but just as a straight character, I think she's more interesting.
Yeah. She's a lot more complex.
This is maybe one of my few complaints of this movie. And I hate to say it, but it has to do with River Phoenix.
Oh, really?
big fan of the Phoenix family. Obviously, Joaquin is my favorite actor. River may he rest in peace. But that beginning sequence is cool because we like get to learn how Indy works. I guess like we get to see how he gets his hat and why he doesn't like snakes and where that scar comes from. But like,
Yep.
It happens like every defining characteristic of Indiana Jones happens when he's 12 within 5 minutes of each other. I was just like, okay, come on.
Okay.
I think like it's a fine like, oh cool, that's how we got everything. That's awesome. But then at the same time, it's like, really, everything happened within a few seconds. Does he get his whip there too? I think does he get his whip? I feel like he does.
He doesn't get his whip. We figure out why he's able to use whip.
Okay. I knew something like that came in too.
Remember, he falls into the train car and there's a lion in there and he just grabs a whip off the wall, but it's not his.
Okay.
Like, he doesn't keep it.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
We get his fear of snakes. We get his hat. That's the big thing.
His hat, yeah. And the scar too.
Oh, yeah.
Because he has a scar
true.
On his face, on like his left eye, like off of his left eye a little bit.
Yeah.
So
the reason
it's like four or five things.
Yeah. Harrison was in a car accident when he was like 19. That's why he has the scar.
But yeah, so it's like four or five things that happen instantly, and it's kind of cool because you're like, oh, that's how Indiana Jones is Indiana Jones. But at the same time, it's like, but everything happened within these 5 seconds or 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then there was a TV series in the 90s called The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones, which kind of went into this more. Like, they made a lot of episodes, and they were like long, like hour-long episodes of just different adventures he went on during World War I and stuff. So I haven't seen enough of them, but I guess they're considered canon for the franchise. Okay. So that would go into it more.
Cool. Yeah, that might be worth checking out. Although I don't watch TV, so.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The other interesting thing about that is, so there's this obscure movie from the 80s, which is actually pretty good, called The Mosquito Coast. And the only reason I watched it is because I was trying to watch a bunch of Harrison Ford movies.
Yeah.
Essentially, Harrison plays this like disillusioned inventor who's tired of like American culture and American commercialism and capitalism and everything. So he moves his family to like the jungle in South America, and basically like it's a tropical jungle, and he builds a machine that makes ice like in the middle of this jungle.
Awesome.
And anyway, so River Phoenix plays his son. And what Indy realized during the production of that movie was, hey, this kid looks a lot like me, like how I was when I was his age.
When Harrison Ford realized, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Harrison Ford realized that. So when they made Last Crusade, and he's like, well, you got to cast River as me.
That's interesting.
So
that is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So with let's I guess talk about that fourth movie. Not even going to say its name.
I guess we can.
Just kidding. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade of raiding the Temple of the Kingdom Crystal Skull. I think that's the official title. The Last Crusade of raiding the Temple of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
There it is.
Yes.
Okay.
So question
number one. There's a lot
to
unpack there.
Why? Question number one is why. This is 20 years after number 3.
Never too late to make a little money. Or
I suppose. How much money did this movie make? I'm gonna look it up.
I'm gonna look it up right now. It's got to be an absurd number.
Yeah. So, Crusade number 3 was made in '89, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was made in
2008.
2008. Okay, so it's 19 years later.
Yep.
What do you got for box office?
The budget was $185 million.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Box office return was $790.6 million.
Okay, that's also a lot. So how much of that 180 million was Harrison Ford? 150?
Harrison, there's a now famous clip, like when Indiana Jones 5 was first announced in like 2015. He went on like Jimmy Kimmel, and they said there was this. Jimmy was asking him like, so they finally got you something that like you got really excited about and that you really liked. He goes, oh yeah, it's gonna be really good. And then Jimmy's like, so can you divulge any questions about the script, like what's in it, like what plot devices are we looking at? And then Harrison Ford just goes, oh, the script. I was talking about the contract, the offer.
This had to have been the same for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He was like, sure, I'll do it for $100 million.
Harrison Ford would do anything for $100 million.
My word. Did you see Call of the Wild this last year?
No, I didn't.
He probably got $75 million for that.
Oh, yeah. And it was all shot on green screen.
Yeah, it's
like
terrible.
He didn't even have to go anywhere.
Terrible CGI. He's like, fine, but I'm not going further than 5 miles from my house. They're like, okay, perfect. We'll find a studio.
Well, they probably just set it all up in his backyard.
They're like, all you need to do is not shave and talk really gravelly. He's like, okay, I can do that. Anyway, so I really don't like this movie, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I think it's bad. I think it's pretty bad.
I don't think it's a bad.
I think
it's a terrible Indiana Jones movie. I think it's a decent movie.
That's probably fair to say. I've seen this one twice. I think.
Yeah.
I think I was just let down by this one, where I was just like, "Oh, that sucked. I'm upset." But if you just looked at it as a movie in general, I think it'd be decent to good. But as an Indiana Jones movie where I have expectations, I'm upset by it. And I think that when I watch a movie, it goes into like the expectations / like what it could be. And Indiana Jones could be good, or it should be good. It should be great. And this wasn't, which is very disappointing to me. So that's why it gets a lower grade, essentially, because it should be better and it's not. But yes, objectively, it probably is better than I give it credit for.
Yeah.
I just think, I don't know.
What do you think about the concept?
I think the concept is bad too. Like, I know like 1 and 3, it's like and 2 even. It's like spiritual, like that's fine. But then like you bring in aliens, and I'm like, I don't know. It's just.
I kind of like the concept. I don't think it was executed very well, but I do kind of like the concept because it's the practical application of spirituality and a physical reason for it,
Sure.
right? So this idea, I will say, I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of ancient aliens, just as an idea. Like, what if all these gods that these people were worshiping were just aliens? I think it's a cool idea, and it's kind of that idea of like Indy now has a rationale for why these people are worshiping what they're worshiping. Like, you can see the aliens; they're real.
Yeah.
At the same time, this reason is not necessarily understandable by us. Like, we don't know where they came from.
Sure.
They just came to Earth.
They're just here.
The other interesting thing about this is that when I think George Lucas wanted to do aliens, like he came up with the idea, and then Steven Spielberg was like, no, you've done Star Wars, first of all.
Yeah.
And I've done like Close Encounters and E.T. I don't want to do aliens again. And then George Lucas is like, fine, I'll rewrite the story. And then he comes back like the next week and he goes, okay, so they're not aliens, they're interdimensional beings. And Steven Spielberg's like, oh, okay. Like, what?
Same thing. Okay. We're going to come back just real quick, and then we'll talk just a slight bit more about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then say what we'd want to see in the future. So tune in. Welcome back, everyone. We're just going to quick hit the rest of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, although I don't know if we have too many more thoughts, and then we'll talk about a little bit what we'd like to see in the future, which I do have some thoughts on. So, Sam, any more thoughts on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
Well, we haven't discussed the elephant in the room, which is, of course, a fella named Shia LaBeouf.
Oh, I actually forgot about him. I wasn't going to bring him up, but then I thought it would have been funny if we just skipped him.
Yeah.
So I told this, I think we talked a little bit last week. I said there are a few things in Hollywood that make me laugh. One is when good actors bad act on screen. I think that's hilarious. Like they're supposed to be bad actors, like something like something like that. So like Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's hilarious to me. Ocean's 11 when Brad Pitt and George Clooney walk out of this casino thing with Topher Grace, and Topher Grace is actually playing Topher Grace, and George Clooney and Brad Pitt are playing characters. And the media mobs Topher Grace because he's a celebrity, right? But Brad Pitt and George Clooney just walk on by. That's one of the funniest things ever because those are like two of the biggest stars ever. And then you have Topher Grace. And the third thing that is funny to me is someone thought that Shia LaBeouf could replace Harrison Ford. It doesn't even matter what character it is. But someone thought that.
You got to think about it through the lens of 2008.
Nope, I don't.
Okay. You have to. Because back then, everyone was like, Shia LaBeouf, next big thing. Killing it with the Transformers franchise.
Which is terrible.
Let's have him reboot. Well, yeah, obviously. It's Michael Bay, but...
Love Michael Bay. Michael Bay is great.
But it's like, of course we would have Shia reboot the Indiana Jones franchise. And I hate that they tried to be so subtle about it.
They're so confident with it.
Yeah, we're just introducing him as a side character. He's just Indy's son. He's not the point of the movie. It's like, yeah, obviously you were planning on 5 new movies with Shia LaBeouf, and then years later you realize, oh, this guy is insane.
Yeah.
There's no way we'll get him to commit to a bunch of movies.
Shia LaBeouf is he's fine. He's a fine actor. He's not good.
Yeah.
But he's not terrible. I mean, he's in terrible movies, but he himself is not terrible.
Yeah,
but he can't lead this franchise.
No. But the thing about the character of Mutt is that there's no defining characteristic of him other than he's Indy's son.
Well, he's a rebel. He's a rebel.
He's a rebel.
He wears a leather jacket.
He's very James Dean. Very James Dean. But it's so dumb because like the entire appeal of Indiana is that he's always been at heart this old, cynical, educated professor, even when he was younger. But now he actually is, like, in this movie. And then his son doesn't care about school, like drops out of school. There is actually a legitimately funny moment in this movie where him and Marion are talking and they're sinking in the quicksand, and he goes, "He's a good kid, Marion. You should get off his back about finishing school." And then she goes, Indy, he's your son. He goes, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, Henry Jones III." And then Indy goes, "Why the hell didn't you make him finish school?"
That's funny. I don't remember that.
That's probably the best dialogue in the entire movie.
Okay. We're actually, I don't know why we spent this much time talking about a movie that doesn't exist. So
yeah.
let's talk about what we'd like to see in the future. And this might be a hot take. I would
Yeah.
absolutely love to see Queen of Us All, Charlize Theron, in this franchise.
Really?
I think she'd be perfect.
As what?
I would say, so Indiana Jones is a person. Like, you can't just have the next person be called Indiana Jones, because that's this guy's name, right? I would say the franchise I would love to see it franchise carry over to Charlize Theron, and like have her be the next Indiana Jones character. I know that's a hot take, but like,
that is so bizarre.
She is so
random.
But she's so utterly cool and awesome that I'd just love to see her in it.
It's going to be difficult. One is there's a how do I sound that? How do I put this like gently? There's a fundamental reason why Indiana Jones is masculine as a male, because he has these masculine, definitively masculine tendencies, right? So first of all, it's very hard just commercially to make an entire action franchise that centers on a female protagonist. And I'm not commenting on whether that's good or bad. I'm just saying you don't see a lot of action franchises with a female protagonist.
Here's what I would like to have happen.
Audiences generally don't go to see that, but
here's what I would like to have happen. Oh, they will go see Charlize Theron. Don't worry. I would love to see Indiana Jones 5 be Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, and Charlize Theron, whatever character she is, hunting for the same artifact. So she's kind of
like a rival.
Yeah, so she's not a bad guy, but she's the antagonist, sort of, Yeah. And then essentially the torch gets passed to her at the end of the movie. Then he's like, you do my studies, and I mean, write it how you will, but like, I want to see that.
I think a better way would be make her the rival to Indy, because we know certain things about Indiana Jones 5. We know Indiana Jones will not be recasted. Harrison Ford has said multiple times, "I'm Indiana Jones. When I die, he dies." That's
what I'm saying. That's why you need to give it to someone else. Yeah.
We know for sure that Disney will attempt to milk that franchise as much as possible,
as they should.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to see my childhood get ripped from me before my eyes, but Disney will do what it will do. And 3, we know that Shia LaBeouf will not be in Indiana Jones 5. Like in 2016, as soon as the movie was announced, people started like mailing in like to Lucasfilm, like, will Shia LaBeouf be a part of this project? And they were like immediately like, no, he's not getting invited. So,
but he's going to show up to the premiere with a paper bag over his face.
Yeah, he will show up out of just spite. But so that's an interesting idea. But I think the only way to do that.
So what do you want to see happen?
I want to see a character that's introduced that will, I guess, continue the franchise, but I don't want the franchise to be continued in terms of like, okay, so I don't want like a passing of the torch moment, because Indy would never do that. Like, that's not in his character.
So what if my idea was essentially like Charlize is in it, because I just want Charlize in it.
Okay, that's fine.
And then, but like, it's no longer Indiana Jones. Like it, but she's in a similar. It's that same universe, I guess.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is like, you could introduce her as maybe a rival character who plays a pivotal part in the story, and then the movie ends. Indy is successful inevitably, or whatever. We know that this will be the last movie with Harrison Ford for Indiana Jones, or Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
But then subsequently make movies about Charlize Theron's character, maybe like prequel movies about how she got to that point.
I'm all in. Mullen.
Because we have to define her character, and we also have to make her character completely different from Indiana Jones.
Cool. So I'm casting Charlize. Who would you cast as kind of not a replacement, but like because they're going to continue this universe because it'll make money.
Yeah. So it'll be a separate franchise, but in the same universe.
Yes. Yep. Who are you casting? I think Chris Pine could be one.
Chris Pine would be fine.
He kind of looks like Harrison Ford though, so maybe that's kind of a cop-out answer.
Yeah, I want to see someone like
Rebel Wilson. No.
She would. I'd like to see Rebel Wilson do action stunts, if that's what you mean. I'd like to see that happen.
Oh boy! Okay.
Here, Rebel, you're gonna swing from this branch to the next. Oh, that's mean. But I'd like to see someone like Adam Driver.
He's so good at anything.
That'd be so fun.
Yeah.
Like, couldn't you see Adam Driver as like a rival?
Yeah, he's a physical presence too. So Adam Driver's
like
cool.
He's a Marine. He could do all of these stunts by himself.
Yeah. Like,
it's not Star Wars where everything's on a green screen. Like, there's going to be some practical stunts.
Yeah, he'd be
he would absolutely he'd be down to do this 100%. So there's that. And we know. So the other thing is we know that James Mangold is going to direct this. Indiana Jones 5.
Which we're all excited for.
I am excited for it. The script has gone through too many rewrites, like 7 or 8 rewrites by just different screenwriters who just seem to not be able to get it.
Not enough, in my opinion. I'd keep rewriting it.
Keep rewriting.
Let's get like 15 minds in this.
There have been like 15 people who wrote the script.
30.
They're just like, no, I can't go anywhere with it. Here you go. It's just like no one attempts to rewrite it themselves. They're just like no one finishes a draft and then is like, all right, let me rewrite that. Yeah. It's always like, I finished a draft. I hate it.
So
but the other thing I'm interested in, what do you think? What would you like to see as the MacGuffin or the plot device?
This movie would have to take place in what, the 90s? Is that it?
It's only the 60s. It'd be the 60s.
Oh, frick, I'm way off. Okay.
Yeah, because
I don't know. I think you'd have to.
Crystal Skull was the 50s.
Oh crap! Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. What would you say?
I heard something about the Bermuda Triangle, and I got intrigued.
That'd be interesting. I think you could come up with a dozen different things, and I'd be like, yeah, that'd be cool. I don't think I have anything off the top of my head.
Well, we do know that the movie is set to be in the late 60s-ish, and that's kind of like when the countercultural movement was really a thing. University students, obviously, protesting for free speech.
Yeah. Let's just have the movie
particularly in places like Berkeley, California.
Indiana Jones be a walk on Washington. Let's just have him doing the protests. Like, he's not doing anything else but holding a picket sign.
He finds like MLK's lost diary or something.
That'd be so cool.
Is there an artifact that would reflect that countercultural movement, like changing the world? I don't know.
I don't know of one, to be honest.
It would have to do with like
I would not be the person to ask though, so that'd be
Yeah.
So let's real quick do our ranking of the 4 Indiana Jones. Mine would be Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, and then Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Is that yours too?
I think that's everybody's.
Okay. I don't think that's a hot take or anything.
Like I said, I like Last Crusade more, but I think Raiders is probably a better movie.
That's fair. That is fair.
So yeah. But it is my favorite franchise. I love the original trilogy.
Absolutely.
With all my heart.
So let's hit some weekly recommends here. Sam, do you have one? Or if not, I can go.
Go ahead. I need to
Okay.
think of mine.
So I've just spent like the past 15 minutes just raving about Charlize Theron, who's absolutely phenomenal. And most people are probably like, who the heck is that? So I'm going to recommend a movie then that Charlize is in. Probably her best performance, and that's Monster from 2003, maybe 2003, where she won Best Actress. She's kind of a chameleon in the sense that she'll change in this movie. She does change her physical appearance vastly to look like this person who she portrays, who's a real life person.
Yeah.
So, Monster is essentially Charlize is a serial killer, or her character is a serial killer, and that the FBI is trying to track her down. She was one of the first female serial killers ever, actually.
Ooh, trailblazing. There you go.
Yeah. She's just equality, man. You know, females can be serial killers too.
Feminist icon.
So Monster gets my recommend. Great, really good movie.
Yeah, I gotta check.
Charlize is even better. And the movie, the character is not the most attractive woman ever, but Charlize is absolutely beautiful. So just keep that in mind. All right.
She shaved her eyebrows.
She did she gained like 40 pounds for this role too.
Jesus. Oh my god.
Yeah, she's crazy. She's insane.
absurd.
Anyway, do you have one?
Yeah, kind of speaking of evil women, I've been listening to audiobooks. I've been trying to there's a lot of free audiobooks on YouTube that you can just kind of download the audio for and just enjoy. A lot of like classic literature and stuff like that. So I've been trying to read through John Steinbeck's entire, I guess, what would you call that? A bibliography?
Yeah.
It's a bibliography.
I think that makes sense.
Because I think Steinbeck is one of my favorite writers just because his prose is so just clear, and yet it's still evocative. Like, unlike Hemingway, he doesn't use just simple sentences.
Yeah.
But it's also very clear and easy to understand. So I really enjoy that about Steinbeck. And I've read his important works, except for this one, which I just finished, which is East of Eden, which he considered his masterpiece, and I would also consider his masterpiece. This is a long book. It's like a 25-hour audiobook. So it takes a long time. But if you got time to kill, it is fantastic. It has a narrative structure unlike anything I've seen before. It trips back and forth in time. It follows like 15 different characters, and they're all interconnected and interwoven, so you don't really lose track of who's who.
Sure.
And it just has a lot of interesting questions. The reason I say evil antagonist is the antagonist of this book is kind of like a very famous but underrated female antagonist named Kathy Trask. So this movie deals a lot with book deals a lot with, I guess, life and death, and how you reconcile with yourself, purpose, and what you're doing in life. So it's a really fascinating read if you get the time. So East of Eden by John Steinbeck.
Awesome. That's a good recommend. So reach out to us on Instagram at Those Film Nerds and on Gmail, thosefilmnerds@gmail.com. Tell us your 2 cents on Indiana Jones. We'll definitely, we'd love to hear that information, and then send in 2 actors too that I can link. That's always a fun bit, I think. And then, Sam, what's your Letterboxd? So the folks know.
My Letterboxd is sjdierberger, and we'll, as always, put that in the description down below.
If you can't spell Dierberger, just unsubscribe. Don't ever listen.
Just unsubscribe. That's such an easy last name.
Yeah.
Come on.
Seriously, come on. Mine is Will Spalding, so check us out both over there on Letterboxd.com. Super fun times talking Indiana Jones today, and we'll be back next week as always. So with that being said, thank you everyone for listening today.
Absolutely. Have a good one, everyone.
Yeah.